The first time you hear the word, it doesn't sound like a word. It sounds like a door closing. Assassin. In the market, it is spoken the way people speak about plague, quietly, with a glance over the shoulder. You are pouring water into clay cups when the stranger arrives. Plain robe, plain sandals, the posture of someone who has practiced being ignored. He does not ask your name. He studies your hands, steady, calloused, patient, and asks only this: do you want your life to mean something, or do you want it to merely end? You should laugh. You don't. Meaning is the one luxury poverty offers for free. He leaves a worn coin on your counter. On one side, a simple mark like a mountain peak. On the other, nothing, a blank. A week from today, he says, before dawn, follow the river until the path begins to climb. And if I don't? Then you will forget this conversation, he replies, almost kindly, and spend years wondering why you survived it. A week later, you walk beside the river in moonlight. The path climbs into rock and pine. Halfway up, a boy sits on a boulder with a lamp at his feet, dressed like a shepherd, held like a sentry. He points at the coin in your palm. Show me. You show him. Now, throw it away. Your throat tightens. Tokens are safety, proof, permission, but you came to a place that hates permission. You fling the coin into the ravine and listen to it strike stone once, then vanish. The boy nods. Good. Follow the light. Do not look back. Hours later, hands blindfold you at a gate that looks like shadow in stone. You are led upward until air thins and the world below becomes a rumor. When the cloth is removed, you stand on a terrace above a green valley and sheer cliffs, a fortress that turns geography into armor. Alamut, the eagle's nest. A man in plain robes approaches, unarmed, yet followed by guards who watch you like a verdict. Welcome, he says. Here, words are heavier than steel. The oath. They bring you into a windowless chamber where torches burn low, as if even light is rationed. Other recruits kneel beside you, scribes, laborers, a student, a thief. None look like warriors. That is why the order wants them. The teacher introduces himself only by function, da'i, missionary, instructor, the voice of a hidden cause. He begins by cutting through the stories you've heard. They call us monsters, he says. It makes killing us feel clean. Then he names you properly. We are Nizari Ismailis, Shia. We believe the world needs living guidance, the Imam, descended from the Prophet's family. Empires worship crowns. We follow a chain. He speaks of Zahir and Batin, the outer meaning everyone argues about in markets, and the inner meaning taught in whispers. He speaks of Talim, authorized learning, not rumor, not mob certainty. The seduction is immediate, not just belonging, but access, a map beneath the map. And then he names the cost. If you stay, he says, your old self becomes dangerous. You will be rebuilt. A worn dagger is placed on the carpet between you. Its edge catches torchlight like a thin line of truth. Speak your oath, the da'i says, and choose. Your throat is dry, your heart is loud, yet you kneel and speak because you know what waits below the mountain. Work that grinds you down, days that end without story. Here, at least, the story is sharp. When you finish, the room seems to exhale. Now, the da'i says, you belong to a secret, and secrets demand payment. You think he means gold. You will learn he means everything else. The eagle's nest. Your first months at Alamut feel less like training and more like being dismantled. Dawn prayer, work in terraced gardens that cling to the mountain like stubborn promises, lessons in rooms that smell of ink and candle smoke, Silence during meals, not because joy is forbidden, but because attention is sacred. You expected barracks, you find a monastery with knives. Hierarchy exists, but it is not worn like jewelry. You learn it by watching who speaks and who listens. Dais move like veins through the cities, carrying doctrine and rumor. Rafiqs, senior companions, walk with calm confidence, as if they can see a second layer of the world. Fidais, the devoted, are the strangest. Ordinary faces, quiet mouths, eyes that never waste motion. At night, older men tell stories in low voices. They speak of Hasan-i, the first master of the eagle's nest, not as a king, but as a principle, patience turned into architecture. They say he took Alamut without an army, through persuasion, disguise, and time. They say he lived like an ascetic, and that even his own family was not spared discipline. One story hits you like cold water. Hasan executed a son who broke the rule. Literal or symbolic, it lands where it is meant to land. Here, loyalty is not sentimental, it is structural. You begin to understand the order's first rules even before anyone teaches them. Obedience is chosen, not forced, and once chosen, it must be absolute. The frightening part is how quietly this is enforced. No shouting, no whips, just a community where every eye is a mirror and every mistake echoes. Some nights you imagine your mother's face, then you remember the coin you threw away, the first thing you sacrificed. You did not trade poverty for comfort, you traded anonymity for purpose. And purpose, you are learning, is not gentle.
Forged by boredom. Training begins with disappointment. You want spectacle, secret techniques, dramatic rites. Instead, you get repetition. Stairs until your calves burn, walls until your fingers stop begging, balance beams until your ankles learn obedience, running with stones in your hands so your arms stay steady while your lungs scream. Then they give you a book. Your mentor, an older fidai whose name you never learn, watches your confusion and says, "Do you think the world is conquered only by muscle?" You learn to read more than script. You learn to read rooms. A caravanserai has patterns. Who sits with their back to the wall? Who laughs too loudly? Who touches a belt when lying? Who watches exits? Habits are doors. You learn accents and phrases, not like a poet, but like a man who needs to pass as harmless. You practice being forgettable, different clothes, different posture, different stories, until you stop feeling attached to any of them. Weapon training is almost insulting in its simplicity. A dagger, a short blade meant for intimate work. A sword can lie, swinging wide, claiming distance. A dagger has no room for theater. It forces you to admit what violence is, a decision made inside a heartbeat. Rumors circulate about poisons and drugs. Your mentor hears you repeat one and snaps. Fearlessness is cheap. Any drunk can be fearless. We cultivate something rarer, clarity. Then he teaches you to sit for hours, watching a courtyard, doing nothing. Boredom is the true forge. If you can master boredom, fear becomes manageable. If you can master fear, you can master yourself. And a man who masters himself becomes a weapon that does not shake. That discipline feeds the order's greatest tool, reputation. You hear stories of powerful men waking to find a dagger planted in their pillow, not to kill, but to prove killing would be easy. Notes appearing inside locked rooms, guards bribed by nothing more than the idea that resistance is pointless. Whether every story is true almost doesn't matter. Fear spreads itself. A siege costs grain, a dai tells you. A battle costs blood.
A reputation costs only patience. You finally understand what you are becoming. Not a soldier who conquers land, a message that moves through power, sealed with your life. The lever of empires. The day they tell you to leave the mountain, your stomach tightens as if a rope has been cinched inside you. The da'i lays rough travel clothes on the carpet. You go to Qazvin, he says. You will not return soon. You ask the question without meaning to. Why me? Because you are not remarkable, he replies. The insult lands, then becomes praise. Remarkable men are remembered. Remembered men are traced. He gives you a folded strip of paper. Not a target, he says, a name. Deliver it to the one who will understand. In the city, you learn what the order means by stealth, not invisibility, but normality. You laugh at jokes you don't like. You bow at the right moments. You listen without looking like you listen. You live inside a crowd without belonging to it. Days later, a second message finds you. No name this time, only a place, a date, and one word at the bottom. Fidai, devoted. The mission you witness next is not yours, but it will brand your mind forever. The target is Nizam al-Mulk, vizier of the Seljuks, architect of Sunni power, the man whose policies have tightened around minorities like a noose. Senior men don't speak of revenge, they speak of leverage. Remove the mind, one Rafiq murmurs, and the body stumbles. The moment comes on a crowded road, surrounded by attendants and soldiers, supposedly the safest place in the world for a powerful man. Instead, it is the perfect stage. A fidai steps forward, a quick movement, a collapse, a scream rises as if the crowd has discovered its own throat. Then the most shocking part, the attacker does not run. He stands, blade still in hand, like a man who has already left his body behind. Guards cut him down. The crowd surges. You survive chaos only because you are forgettable. That night, hiding from patrols, you whisper the question you've been carrying since Alamut. Why didn't he flee? Your mentor answers as if explaining arithmetic. Because a public death is part of the message. Escape is luck, death is devotion, and devotion terrifies empires. Soon you hear the aftershocks, panic, purges, planned campaigns that dissolve into politics. The empire does not collapse, but it wobbles long enough for the mountain to breathe. You have not seen an army defeated in battle. You have seen history nudged with a single hand, and you return to Alamut with a feeling worse than pride, certainty.
Masyaf and the Mountain Chief. After the vizier falls, the world starts looking at the mountains differently. New recruits arrive, not only believers, but men drawn by the simple fact that the powerful can bleed. The da'is fan out through towns and courts, recruiting through different doors. Justice for the crushed, safety for the cautious, meaning for the lost. A secret order survives by being many things to many minds. Meanwhile, the fortresses multiply. Alamut is the heart, but hearts need limbs. Strongholds appear in hostile provinces, Lamasar, Girtku, nests in Kugistan, each a node of grain stores, wells, training rooms, safe houses, and, if necessary, graves. You learn the quiet genius. A network is harder to decapitate than a kingdom. Years later, you are sent west to Syria, where chaos is thicker than dust. Crusader states cling to the coast. Sunni rulers fight each other while preaching unity. Alliances change like weather. Your order enters this turbulence the way a dagger enters a seam. The Syrian castles are smaller and more exposed, but they sit above routes armies must use. The most famous is Masyaf, headquarters of a leader Europeans will later wrap in legend, Rashid al-Din Sinan, the old man of the mountain. Sinan is not physically imposing. He doesn't wear gold, yet men around him watch him with the fierce attention of people listening for God's verdict. He speaks rarely. When he does, it is in sentences that feel sharpened. You cannot fight Franks like Franks, he tells you. You cannot fight sultans like sultans. You cannot fight armies like armies. He taps the table once. So we fight fear with certainty. We fight certainty with doubt. Under his leadership, the Syrian branch refines the craft. Diplomacy backed by threat, threat backed by reputation, reputation backed by a willingness to die. Sometimes tribute is extracted without swords. Sometimes truces are bought with a single warning. Sometimes the order becomes a shadow ally, turning on an enemy of an enemy and disappearing again before gratitude can form. Outsiders call it treachery. Inside, you call it survival. But survival has a side effect. The line between sacred duty and political calculation blurs. You begin to sense a new danger, not the armies outside the walls, but the temptation inside. The temptation to believe your reputation makes you untouchable. And history, you will learn, always punishes that belief. War on the nervous system. The West learns your name after it has been burned by it. It starts with Christian lords who dismiss you as a local superstition until one of their own is stabbed in the street. Raymond of Tripoli, they say, was attacked near his city gate. He had guards, he had walls, none of it mattered. The tale spreads faster than truth and sharpens with every retelling. They can reach anyone. They wear any face. They are already inside. Fear does what diplomacy often cannot. It forces attention. Then comes Saladin, Salah al-Din, the great unifier, the sultan whose charisma is a weapon. Twice men of your order reach him. Twice the strike fails. Outsiders call it proof you are not invincible. Inside it is still victory, because the target is not always the body. Sometimes the target is the sleep beneath the crown. After those attempts, Saladin treats your castles with a different kind of respect. He has seen the thinness of the line between protected and reachable. Even if no blade touches him again, the thought of it lives under his ribs. Years pass. Crusader politics rot in sunlight. Marriages, betrayals, arguments over thrones. Your order watches the same way a hawk watches a field, not hurried, not sentimental. Then comes Tyre. Conrad of Montferrat, newly chosen king in all but name, walks through a street in broad daylight. Two men approach, some say dressed as monks, some say they had blended into his household for months like harmless furniture. The details change depending on who tells the story, but the ending doesn't. Daggers, stone, guards too late, a sudden hole in the future. Europe erupts with conspiracies. Was it Richard the Lionheart, Saladin, Sinan playing chess with kings? The uncertainty is part of the terror. If the world cannot even agree who ordered a killing, then the world must accept a more frightening idea. There are forces beyond royal control.
You are in Masyaf when the news arrives. Sinan listens without expression, then says something that chills you more than any tale of blades. "Let them argue," he murmurs. "Confusion is a weapon that never dulls." You realize then that the assassin's most shocking method is not murder, it is narrative. They do not merely kill men, they rewrite what people believe is possible. And once possibility changes, every throne becomes a chair balanced on air.
Fire in the inner temple. Outsiders imagine your order is powered by sorcery. The truth is more unsettling. It is powered by meaning. In the castles, faith is not a public performance, it is a discipline. You learn the language of the imam, the centrality of guidance, the idea that revelation has layers. The da'is speak of batin the way architects speak of foundations, unseen, holding everything up. There are rituals that look mystical only because they are private, oaths renewed in candlelight, teaching circles where a single verse is unfolded like cloth until it reveals a pattern you didn't know existed, long silences treated as prayer. Once, years into your service, word arrives from Alamut that sends a tremor through every corridor, a ceremony of Qiyamah, resurrection. The imam, long veiled in secrecy, is to appear openly to the community, declaring a kind of spiritual unveiling. When you return east, the fortress feels charged, as if the stone itself is listening. In a courtyard hung with banners, the imam appears. Hardened men tremble, some weep. You feel the strange mix of ecstasy and fear. Ecstasy because the hidden center is suddenly visible. Fear because veils exist for reasons, and removing them always changes the world. The teaching is not lawlessness, as enemies later claim, but transformation, an insistence that inner truth can outweigh outer habit. It fractures some minds and strengthens others. The community adapts because adaptation is the order's oldest skill. You learn an unexpected lesson. The greatest danger to a secret order is not always the enemy outside the walls. Sometimes it is the intensity inside. Meaning, once ignited, can warm a community or burn it. And you, a fidai, live forever on that edge.
The garden lie.
This is where the story becomes stranger than the truth, because your enemies cannot accept the simplest explanation. They cannot accept that ordinary men would choose to die for an idea after years of patient discipline and spiritual commitment. That explanation is too dangerous. It suggests devotion is real, contagious, transferable. So they invent a cleaner cause: drugs. They call your people hashashin, an insult that sounds like hashish users. They describe secret gardens, paradise on earth, where young men are drugged, carried inside, awakened among fountains and fruit and women, then promised a return only if they obey. It is a beautiful lie because it comforts the listener. If they are devoted, it is not because their cause is compelling, it is because they are tricked. Centuries later, Europeans will repeat the lie because it tastes like fantasy. A traveler will write about it. Poets will season it. Scholars will argue over the origin of the very word assassin. The myth will travel farther than any fidai ever did. Inside the castles, a young recruit once asks your da'i if the gardens are real. The da'i answers with weary patience. If paradise can be built by stone and water, he says, then paradise is cheap. He gestures toward the terraces and storerooms, toward the harsh work of survival. Our paradise is not a garden. It is endurance. It is community. It is the belief that empires do not own truth. And then, almost softly,
Our enemies prefer drugs to devotion because devotion is contagious. You understand the bitter irony. The garden story is likely false, yet the mechanism behind the fear is true. Belief can be weaponized. Meaning can be sharpened into violence. That is why Europe will remember you as monsters or romantics, but rarely as what you were, a minority trying to survive between giants. And in trying to survive, discovering how easily legend can be forged. When myth meets engineers. Then comes the enemy your reputation cannot bargain with. You hear of the Mongols first as distant horror, riders from the east who move faster than news. Cities that resist become lessons written in ash. Thrones that seemed eternal collapse in a season. At first you tell yourself the mountains will protect you. Alamut was built for siege, wells, grain, stone, height. Your order has survived Seljuks, rival sects, Crusaders, and the slow grind of hatred. But the Mongols do not fear myths. They use fear as logistics. They arrive with engineers, patience, and the cold certainty of a force that doesn't need your world to make sense. They don't want tribute, they want erasure, the idea of Nizari independence wiped out like ink under water. Castles fall one by one. Some resist and are shattered. Some surrender and are punished anyway, because terror is part of the campaign. A few hold out astonishingly long, proving the fortress doctrine was never fantasy. Then Alamut itself is surrounded. You are older now. Your hands still know the dagger's weight, but your mind has become sharper, measuring supplies, watching morale, feeling fate's angle. From the walls you see dust on the horizon like a bruise. You listen to siege engines groan and realize your old economy, fear for free, does not work on an enemy who considers fear a tool, not a limit. Surrender, when it comes, is not glorious. It is negotiation, exhaustion, the calculation of how many children might live if a gate opens rather than breaks. The fortress is dismantled. Its stones remain, but its heart is torn out. The library, whispered about as a storehouse of knowledge, is searched. Some books are saved. Many are destroyed. You watch smoke rise and feel something inside you go quiet, as if a voice has been silenced. If you ever believed the order was immortal, the illusion dies here, not with a blade, but with fire. And yet, even in ruin, something persists, because the order was never only walls, it was doctrine, community, a way of seeing authority and survival. Those things scatter into other lands, they hide, they adapt, they wait. The world will say the assassins ended, but you know a myth doesn't end, it mutates. In Europe, the word assassin will live on, detached from its origins, used for any killing that feels political and secret. People will repeat the garden story because it is too delicious to die. Enemies will dress you in horror. Storytellers will dress you in romance. And the truer story, discipline on cold mountains, patience as weapon, devotion as architecture, will remain harder to swallow because it is not fantasy. It is human. On your last night in the ruins, wind moves through broken stone. You remember the market, the stranger, the coin, the question. Do you want your life to mean something, or do you want it to merely end? You understand now that meaning is not always noble. Sometimes meaning is simply what you can endure. Sometimes it is the story others will tell about you. You close your eyes and see the eagle's nest intact, impossible, stubborn, real. And you learn the final rule, the one history teaches everyone, sooner or later. Every blade is temporary, but the hunger for legend is eternal.